Cleaner races prevailed at Zandvoort, and that was in spite of the challenging and tight layout. Now we focus forward and attempt to tackle the beautiful Italian hills of Mugello. Winding like pasta and with a front straight longer than an endless supply of breadsticks, this place will require the drivers to bring an appetite for speed as we get ready to watch the PCA Sim Racing Series 11 Challenge class. You'll see it all live here on RaceSpotTV. Hi, I'm Joe Peak, and with me in the booth tonight is Reese Gardner. Behind the scenes is our director, Ramir Cisneros. Well, Reese, this is a new track, as I said. We spent the last time at Zandvoort, but this is drastically different.
Yeah, indeed it is. You go from the very tight confines of Circuit Zandvoort to the more open expanses of Mugello. This place does have, I think, just as much elevation change as Zandvoort. Follows the terrain, but it is fast and flowing, and overtaking opportunities will come a tiny bit more easily, I think, than at Zandvoort, but it'll still be a big challenge with a lot of very quick corner entries.
Yeah, that's those sweeping corners certainly going to test the drivers with the stability on these cars, no doubt. It's a decently long lap around here, so drivers will have to keep their wits about them and also want some straight line speed down that front stretch with a good exit out of the final corner. Now, taking a look at the championship right now, Casey McDonald has a decent lead, but not a huge lead, honestly. That could definitely change around depending on how things go this evening, with Kevin Schultz only about 4 points behind Karachai up there. But McDonald, with his 12 points ahead, should hopefully hold on to the lead unless disaster strikes, or at least be close. Now, it gets very tight behind them, as you can see. It stays with about 20 points, basically, all the way down to 7th place. So we could see a lot of swapping around throughout the evening. But looks like they are in the midst of the practice session. Qualifying going to be 10 minutes or 3 laps, whichever comes first for our drivers. And what is pretty ideal conditions at about 74 Fahrenheit. So drivers just trying to get those tires up to temperature and on their way, Reese. How important do you think having track position is going to be this time around? Because last time at Zandvoort, that was one of the big keys.
Yeah, I think track position is going to be just as important here at Mugello, Joe. Like I highlighted, there's a lot of quick corners at this place, and the majority of the circuit, the corners flow directly into one another. So getting a move done is going to be difficult. Track position is going to be key. I think with the long front straight, slipstream is going to be a big opportunity to get a move done. So if you're behind someone, then you'll hope that you'll be able to get a good run out of the final corner, get the pass done into turn 1, but everywhere else around the circuit, you're going to have to really work to get past.
So we see Joshua Jepson coming across the line. Right now, Kevin Schultz has the quickest time in the practice, but it's a pretty short practice for this series. They just have a little bit of warm-up, about 10 minutes before they head off into that qualifying session. So you better have done your practice laps over the course of the week on the lead in. Watching them now come out through one of the higher points of the circuit here. This is up and across Borgo San Lorenzo, and then it plunges back downhill through Casanova into Savelli, and some really beautiful sounded Italian names. But really, you can see on this long stretch, that is where most of the passes are likely expected to try and take place into San Donato.
Indeed, Alex Lidback making his way into that first turn now. It's basically a giant hairpin, this opening corner, but it flows directly into this very lovely airspan, which is a little bit slower than it looks. Checkered flag flying in the session. Meanwhile, practice already over, Joe. It is just about time for qualifying, and in terms of one lap pace, Kevin Schultz is looking pretty quick, 148.9. Let's see how close he can get to that over the course of the 3-lap qualifying.
Yeah, Jeremy Main behind him with a 49.7, which is a pretty good gap between them. On that one. They're now heading out into that qualifying session. Now, if you're not familiar with iRacing, one of the things they do need to be wary of is their off tracks, the white lines that mark the boundaries for pretty much the entire length of the racetrack. You have to keep the four wheels within it. In some cases, need to keep half the car within it. But if you go beyond that boundary, whichever the case is, Reese, that deletes the lap.
Indeed, it does. Mugello, one of those circuits where you need to keep at least two wheels on the curbs, I believe. So there's a little bit more space for the drivers to work with, but you have to pick your lines, pick your exits perfectly. There is plenty of boundary beyond the curbs around here. You see the green painted concrete on the inside. That extends quite a bit. So there's a lot of it that's able to be used, but if you overstep the mark, then yes, your lap will be invalidated. I think with as many corners as there are around this place, drivers are going to have to focus on getting the tyres up to temperature, and Rob Gerwing obviously taking a little bit of temperature out of his tyres, running a tiny bit into the gravel trap.
Yeah, just dipping it off ever so slightly. And as we come up through these winding S's, back and forth, another thing that is really distinct about this track is there's so many changes of direction throughout the lap. There's not many corners that are back-to-back the same way. And eventually when you get to them, there are also still more of these high-speed turns. Look at him try to use as much of the track as he can. He is definitely going all the way out to those curbs where possible. This is Johan Nye coming around the last turn, which is Busin, onto the main straight. It's a big plunge, and then kind of weaves back and forth as he's getting ready to set a time. Let's see who's going to get the first one down. Looks like, actually, did he just start his lap?
Yeah, it looks like everyone's just completed their out laps at the moment. So this is Johan Nye's first attempt at an actual time, and slightly wide in the first turn. He won't be too happy with that, I'd imagine. Have to hook up the apex. Mugello is a track that is usually more famous for motorcycle racing, and it definitely suits those cars. Looks to me like Dave Douglas is still trying to gear up in terms of speed. He took the turns a little bit slower than I anticipated, so probably just still feeling the track out. Yeah,
exactly. And like I said, some of them might not have had all the practice that they want, so if they're still kind of getting used to the conditions, it might take a bit for them to really get fully up to speed here. Donald Green coming up through the two Arabiatas, and then it's a big crest before it heads down into Scarperia. We're checking on Lisa Eskridge in the meantime, just a little bit farther back. Again, everybody still has yet to set a time out here, so we're waiting to see who is going to put the first one on the board. She goes down through Korean Tao, and you've got a swift chicane here through Biandetti. In fact, very little braking through this portion.
Yeah, very little braking indeed. Chris Scheusler also going through the same part of the racetrack. It's basically flat out through that sequence of turns, but then you've got to get on the brakes a little bit more for the final turn. It's incredibly long, downhill. You want to get on the throttle early. It opens out in the middle of the corner, but be careful not to run over the curbs and onto the concrete, otherwise the lap will be invalidated. George Poulos and Kevin Schultz, the pace setters at the front of the field. Schultz, my goodness, look at the gap that he has, nearly a second. Casey McDonald, only a few hundredths behind George Poulos there.
Yeah, that's really kind of tying into what we saw in the warm-up, that Schultz looked miles ahead of everybody around him. Jeremy Main was second in practice. Well, he's now second on the grid provisionally. Poulos behind, like you said, about 9/10 of a second. Main manages to get within 7/10, which is still a massive gap.
Yeah, massive indeed. Joe Souza, meanwhile, coming through the approaching the final sector at the very least. Keep it flat through the S. Use as much of the curb as you dare. What can the 704 do? One of the few drivers left to actually get a lap on the board in the session.
Yeah, and so we watch Joshua Jepson now, who is a little earlier on. Should have enough time for everybody to get all 3 laps in, as long as they didn't wait too long out there to set their times. Back to Johan Nye, who is one of the few still needing to put a lap down. First lap got deleted, unfortunately, with a very iconic looking navy blue and gold car in this 141. Switching over to Dave Douglas now in the meantime, who has also still needs to put one down. In fact, he's got what looks like almost a tartan or a plaid on that car.
Yeah, very nice indeed. You don't usually see tartan or plaid on race cars. It has happened a couple of times, but it is rare and I think underrated, underused. It certainly suits the livery very nicely. What I like is almost neon colors contrasted with dark, as Evan Balbier's car is in the in the 099. Sorry, very striking. There'll be no missing that machine.
Absolutely. Those make it a lot easier for us to find them, that's for sure. So Evan coming around to the last corner, the 099. Can he put one on the board here? This is the last bit. And let's see, how many laps has he done? This is his second attempt. So if he does miss this one, he gets one last try at it. We're going to step away from him before he'll cross the line, unfortunately. Balbier, I'm just keeping an eye on him. Will manage to get one in. A 53.3 is only going to be good enough for 19th, unfortunately. Schussler just put one down, and Douglas is now the last car that we need to set a time.
Indeed. So Douglas comes out of the final corner there. I saw through the flat-out S, he was still keeping two wheels on the curb, taking the fastest line through. 1 minute 55 is going to be his lap, even worse, 1:56. So Douglas, I don't think too happy with that, and the lap didn't even count. So he's only got that one chance left to set his time onto the grid. So keep an eye out for Dave Douglas. Only driver on the grid with a time not on the board.
Everybody else at least has one down. Haven't seen a change for the gap from pole to the outside of the front row. Schultz over Main still at about 0.7 of a second. Schultz puts another lap in, but it's not quicker. Can Main respond to that now that he's got a potential open door? Because he's on his last lap. Here he is on screen right now in that 5.55. He'll come to the line. It comes up early here, just at the beginning of the straight for that timing line. He'll cross it, and it's a 49.9. That's not going to be an improvement.
No. So Kevin Schultz, I think, is very powerfully taken pole position for this event. It doesn't seem like anyone out there has been able to match him. He has much better of a handle on the circuit than everyone else out there. Ed Trippett, meanwhile, still in 12th position, trying to improve. He's making his way through the first part of the circuit now. And where is Ed? He's down in 12th position, 1:51.0 on the last lap. His fastest time, a 1:50.61. He doesn't have much time left to get this lap on the board, but I think with where he is on the lap, should be good. Rob Gerwing, meanwhile, missing his front bumper. He has had a big off somewhere around there.
The good news, I suppose, is that he's already taken his 3 laps, so he doesn't need to worry about it now. He's done with it. Souza here in 8th place will cross on his final lap. Oh, he was a 10th off of his time. That was very close on improving, but it does seem like that first lap was the one to go with. Not seeing very many drivers finding more later on in this Q session.
Yeah, I think drivers just pushing a bit harder and overstepping the limits. But Dave Douglas, who we were following earlier, had finally gotten a lap time on the board, and it was a 1:50.78, 14th place for Douglas. So he should be very happy with how that's gone down. Just getting his time in at the final possible moment. We'll see how well he does in the race to come. We've got a 40-minute race coming up here, Joe. So a lot of time for drivers to get their eye in here at Mugello.
Yeah, there may be a bonus for pole, but it's a lot more for finishing well. So the race is where you really want to have a good run. It looks like qualifying is officially over, which means our grid is set with 21 drivers looking to take to the grid. Kevin Schultz going to take that pole position. Jeremy Main going to be starting in P2. Mehmet Karachai will start from third. He's been very good this season. Can he manage to maybe step 2 positions up and get a win? George Poulos will start from fourth, as Casey McDonald will be P5. Then it's going to be Johan Nye on the outside of the third row, as the next slide sees Robbie Gerwing starting from 7th. Jose Souza will be in the 8th position, and Neil Urbesh will be in 9th. Roger Claveau manages to round out the top 10. And then in row 6, it's going to be Aubrey Ayer and Edward Trippett.
Joshua Jefferson is going to start in 13th place alongside Dave Douglas. Stevenson and Gales on the 8th row of the grid. Lidback and Eskridge, 17th and 18th. Donald Green and Chris Scheusler are going to start rounding out the 10th row of the grid. Evan Balbier starting in 21st place, 153.3, 5/10 off Scheusler. He'll be hoping that his race pace is a little better.
And there you can see all 21 cars ready to go in the background. They are just taking off behind the pace car. 40 minutes. There is at least one scheduled stop because of the fuel being limited in these cars. If you're new to this series, they also are on fixed setup in the challenge. This is essentially the bottom of the main 4 different classes that they run. They have a 5th one called the entry class, which is kind of basically for the newcomers to acclimate before they're slotted into one of these 4. And these are the drivers that might be considered at the bottom, but the fighting is just as fierce and the pride is just as high as if you take a win.
Indeed, a race is a race, no matter what class you're in. And I think the benchmark is going to be that number 13 of Kevin Schultz, the green car at the front of the field. We've got a few primary and secondary colours at the front of the grid here: a green, a yellow, a red, and a purple indigo in the form of George Poulos. So at the very least, we'll be able to tell those guys apart easily. But everyone's going to be focusing on the green, trying to beat Kevin.
Certainly, and they're about to focus on the green when it comes from Barney up at the flag stand here in just a moment. Will Schultz be able to dash away from them like he did in qualifying, or is his pace only good enough for one lap at a time? Can they keep tabs with him? Here goes the pace car into the pits now. Schultz will have control, waiting for the call from the flag stand, and it's being held for quite some time before he's allowed to go. There's the call now. Looks like Kevin Schultz on the loud pedal. Good start from 3rd place. Mehmet Karachai, he's going to try and take 2nd place almost immediately as he weaves up the inside. But it looks like Kevin Schultz starting to pull away as they come up towards the braking zone of San Donato. Coming back around the outside, the yellow machine of Maine. Going to try and defend. He'll get the inside into turn 2 here, Reese.
He will indeed. He defends it, almost gets run into by Mehmet Karasay. Meanwhile, Casey McDonald has worked his way past George Poulos. Poulos running very wide in turn 1, but he's gotten back on the pace nicely. A lot of close racing in the midfield as well. Aubrey Ayer defending from Neil Urbesh, as around the outside Joshua Jefferson's going to try in the chicane. But for the time being at the front here, the green car is streaking away.
It's up by about half a second. Hasn't really pushed it too far at the moment, but definitely looking like he's getting a bit of a gap as we look behind him down to Poulos. So as you mentioned, Casey McDonald managing to kind of sneak through in that darker colored Porsche as they'll crest over the hill, heading into Scarperia now. And they got to watch out for these curbs as, we got a massive accident.
Oh, that's huge. Parts flying everywhere. Who stopped there? Aubrey Ayer and Alex Lidback. What on earth has gone on here? Looks to me like Donald Green running into the back of Casey Lidback there in response to an incident that happened earlier on. Robbie Gerwing spinning in front of the rest of the field.
Yeah, here we've got the replay. So that's what starts it all. And unfortunately, I mean, you can't see much up at the top of that hill. And everybody did a very good job trying to avoid, but a few just could not keep from spinning and clattering into that machine. So we got a few drivers with damage after that one. The good news is they have a spare car if they need it.
Indeed they do. They'll be able to get that car repaired fully and back out on track in just a few moments. Meanwhile, the battle for fourth is on here. Kevin Schultz hasn't broken away as much as I thought he would, but it's definitely on for fourth in the background as McDonald is now trying to defend from Poulos, who's back on the pace, but Poulos spins.
There you can see the dust cloud in the background as he goes off course. That's off of Poggio Secchio. It looks like he's able to get it going and get back on the track to about 12th position. You were talking about how close this fight was. Not sure. He got into the back of him. That's strange. I wouldn't think that'd whip him around like that.
Yeah, I've commentated a few races in the Porsche 911 RSR, which these drivers are racing, and that seems to be a little quirk of the car. You run into the back of someone in front of you, and it actually transfers the momentum in such a way that usually it's the hitting car that spins. So, yeah, got to be very careful of that.
Very unusual behavior, but unfortunately it cost George significantly on that one. Watch out for Casey McDonald, who definitely looks like he's got a good handle on this setup here today. He continues to chase in the red and gray machine, just behind Mehmet Karaçay, who has dropped off of Jeremy Main by about half a second. So this is the battle for the last step on the podium. Let's see if he can get a run out of Busin here.
And let's see if he can indeed. The battle for the top two has broken away, and there's not much competition that Kevin Schultz has at the front of the field, but McDonald looking for the slipstream on Mehmet Karaçay. Jeremy Main is trying his best to keep up. I tell you what, considering the pace that Casey McDonald is starting to show here in the race session, I think he might be a threat for second by the end if he keeps this up.
Certainly. And yeah, once again, in the background there, that fight just doesn't want to seem to let up, as we're going to check out Dave Douglas now, watching on board with the 11th place driver. That's Neil Urbesh just in front of him. And he's actually in a bit of a fight. Whoa, as he's going to get sideswiped by George Poulos. And again, the same section that George had contact before.
Yeah, unfortunately, it was Douglas who actually started the incident there. He hit the yellow speed bumps on the inside of the corner. That unsettled the car as Poulos was coming through, so there wasn't much Douglas could do to recover that.
Back to Karaçay as McDonald still kind of sits behind him, just hovering around. Now, we saw on the top of the screen at the start of this lap, Schultz took the fastest lap, and my goodness, it is 0.8 of a second quicker than Jeremy Main's fastest lap. So he is picking it up.
Yeah, massive pace from Kevin Schultz at the front of this field. You'd imagine that he's going to get a promotion to club at the start of next season with that kind of pace that he's got. But we'll keep our eye on whether or not he can maintain that pace for a full run. We've got our first decisions from race control. Meanwhile, they reviewed the incident that happened around the back of the circuit on lap 1. Robbie Gerwing has been given a black flag for his part in causing that incident.
So he's going to come and have to serve that one. I believe that's a drive-through for him. As we watch, I think, Neil Urbesh being chased by George Poulos. Urbesh also missing quite a bit of bodywork on the front. Doesn't seem to be slowing his straight line speed too much out there, because Poulos is not gaining like I expected.
Yeah, down the straights at the very least. Urbesh's absence of a front bumper is not hindering him, but when we get to this twistier section of the circuit, expect Poulos to really catch up. Poulos is still out of position. Remember, he started in 4th. He's currently down in 11th right now, so he's got a lot more to give from that car.
He's quickly gaining now through this portion of the lap as we jump back to Mehmet once again. Now, it looks like he's pulled away from McDonald by a few more car lengths, so whatever was causing him issues for pace earlier, looks like he's got it under control now. That, or maybe Casey just couldn't hang in the dirty air of that GT3. These GT3 class vehicles do produce a fair bit of downforce, and while it might not be Formula One levels, sometimes it can be harder on these fast turns.
Yeah, certainly can. The Porsche 911 GT3R has the benefit of anti-lock brakes and traction control, which you can certainly make good use of on a circuit like this, but you don't want to be pushing too hard on the exits of the corners. Traction control can sometimes kick in at the wrong time and exacerbate a slide when you're already in one, so smoothness is key.
That was a very smooth exit from Mehmet. He's now caught back up to Jeremy Maines. He's gone from defense to attack. Will he actually try anything? He's going to look for it and then swings back to the racing line. Ooh, bit of a drift off to the middle for Jeremy Maine just to try and dissuade that red and white machine from doing anything unnecessary.
Yep, trying to protect the inside. Not much you can do when someone does that in the first turn at Mugello. Sometimes you can run the outside, though. Donald Green making his way into the pits, I've just noticed. So not sure if that's a scheduled pit stop or if he has damage to repair. It doesn't look like the car's all that damaged, so he'll be able to get back out there. Actually, that's a penalty.
Above. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, sorry. Looked at the race control chat there. Incident at 4 minutes 20 into the session. So that is also the big crash that we saw on lap 1. Green getting into the back of the car in front, I believe, and getting assigned a penalty for that.
Yeah, for those wondering. Oh, and Evan Balbier also getting a black flag. I think, is that who we just saw come into pit lane 2? Yeah, it looks like
Robbie Gerwing coming in.
Oh, so he was serving his. Just took a minute to get around to it, looks like. But yes, the live stewards keep a very sharp eye on the field in this series, and they highly encourage clean racing. Well, not just encourage, enforce clean racing in this series. Hence why we saw a start that until that accident was excellent. Many series will see lots of accidents as cars are still side by side, but usually you don't get those, barring a few exemptions at the start of Series 11 here in the PCA. Coming back to Lisa Eskridge. This is just ahead of Jack Stevenson. Battle for P12 right now. Lisa doing a fantastic job. I think she has the most positions gained, or no, just shy of that, with 6 up from her beginning.
Yep, having just made her way past Jack Stevenson. And doing very well, I have to say. Obviously took big advantage from the lap 1 incident, but keeping the pace up, keeping it nice and consistent, setting 1 minute 52s right now. 3/10 slower than George Poulos up ahead, but I think it's still consistent with cars in the back end of the top 10. It's not just one lap pace that counts, it's consistency as well. And Eskridge's fastest lap is a 151.6, so you can see what kind of potential she's got in that number 20. Meanwhile, this battle for second still heating up. Mehmet Karatai starting to catch up again to Jeremy Maine, and actually equidistant with Casey McDonald. McDonald could be a factor in this as well. 3-car battle for second. We like to see it.
Absolutely, and looks like it's going to be some fun here because as we saw earlier, Casey McDonald not afraid to take a few risks to try and get some position, at least in the first couple laps of this race. He's been stuck behind Mehmet since then, but he's been trying his darndest to see if he can get something set up. In the meantime, we've already also seen an attempt for that P2 on Jeremy Maine. I don't think we're going to get it this time. He's way too far back, and look at how close now the 764 is.
Yeah, Mehmet was not able to keep the speed up through the final corner, and so Casey McDonald trying to go for the move here. A little bit of side draft off the left side of Mehmet, but the outside is where he will have to go. He is later on the brakes. Mehmet, meanwhile, diving back up the inside to defend the position. That's good racing right there. Unfortunately for Casey, he just couldn't get it done.
So, yeah, Mehmet's going to be able to hold him off at least this time. Excellent defense, I thought for sure, with how far ahead he was as they came into the braking zone, that Casey was going to wrap that one up, but no dice at this point. Up and over through Borgo San Lorenzo, and then back down they go once again as we watched on board briefly, looking at that gray 764 still giving chase for a potential podium here today. Those top 3, though, we should point out, are still exactly where they started this race.
Yeah, they're pretty much the only drivers in the field that still are in the positions they started. Casey McDonald up 1. Like you said earlier, Lisa Eskridge, the car with the most positions gained. But Chris Scheusler is also up quite a few places, up 6. So we've got quite a few drivers who are making big gains early on.
Certainly. Yeah, Eskridge still holding the most out there of anybody. Just ahead of Schussler, and would like to hold on to that. Maybe get a few more even, I'm sure, later on. The few drivers that have taken their penalties mostly are back out on the track. Evan Balbier had to work on his internet connection, unfortunately. They do watch that as well. If you have a blinking car, they will park you until you can get that fixed. I just thought we had a car in pit lane there briefly on our cameras, but didn't quite see who that was. In the meantime, checking in on the 141. I think this is, Johan Nye coming down the main straight, sitting in 7th place. He's sizing up Claveau in front of him. And then also not too far behind Souza in that 704.
Yeah, this is a nice 3-car battle, isn't it, for 5th place out here. Johan Nye now officially part of the battle on the timing. He's getting within a second of these two. Souza, I think, having the edge so far, but I'm noticing that Claveau is driving very cleanly. He started in 10th, now in 6th, so hopefully he can keep that momentum going. Speaking of cars in the pits, also noticed that Neil Urbesh is out as well. Apparently, iRacing disqualified him for an unknown reason, but I would think that maybe he's gotten too many off tracks or something to that effect, and has unfortunately overcome the incident limit.
Yeah, they get a DQ at 25 incidents. That would have been a lot in less than 8 laps because he was gone a couple laps ago. I was wondering if maybe he accidentally just drove backwards a little too far on the track trying to get the car turned around, because that can happen. Yeah. Well, in the meantime, we continue to watch the battle for P2. We kind of suspected that Kevin Schultz would make it this, as he's 6 seconds up the road already. So he is blasting forwards past everybody and looking to try and take a dominant win here today. And while it's a battle for best of the rest between the yellow and the red, almost... Actually, yeah, it is in a very appropriate order, because we've got the green, yellow, and red of our Christmas tree going.
Indeed, we have. Very nicely done. Of course, traffic lights as well. Fitting that color scheme. Yeah,
but sorry, I should have called it that. I was thinking drag racing terms. They call it the Christmas tree. Yeah. So, but anyways,
we were talking a bit about drag racing before we went live with Cameron, who does social media, talking about Tony Stewart's new drag car running the same livery that a couple of Corvettes ran at Sebring over the weekend. So I can understand why we went to that.
But Souza still kind of in the front of Claveau here, trying to keep him at bay. He talked about Roger running that nice clean line. Well, Marcos is doing even better, keeping it about 1.1 seconds behind him at this moment. Back and forth once again, down into Pelagio here, and then through Coriental. This is almost a more than 180-degree hairpin, this one, that just sends you downhill. You can see the drop in elevation before it finally spits you out.
Yeah, there's a bit of camber on the inside of the corner as well, which you can use to keep your pace up at the apex. And it's important to get a good exit. I mean, corners like that more than double back on themselves, it's always interesting to see how the drivers tackle it. Usually when I've been driving around Mugello, it's been a case of accelerating early, using the acceleration of the car to rotate yourself on the exit. But seems that a couple of drivers might be having a bit of trouble getting that down. Drivers who are better at longer corners tend to have a bit more success here at Mugello. Robbie Gerwing, meanwhile, having just taken his penalty, we rode on board with him for a moment. He's got his triple screen set up all nice and sorted. But we turn our attention back to the battle for third. Mehmet Karasai still trying to fend off Casey McDonald here, who has had these flashes of really big pace and has been thinking about a move a couple of times over the course of the race so far, but it just seems to be coming in blips, I think, that quicker pace.
Yeah, it's been frustrating for that 764. We've seen him get so close at times, but hasn't been able to completely affect a pass and put him fully behind him. He's certainly gotten a nose ahead once or twice, but you got to chop him off at some point and really assert that I have that position. We'll see if he can get there eventually. Meanwhile, back to that fight that, well, it was between Claveau and Souza. Now it's become between Roger and then Johan Nye in that 141, who is just rocking up to the rear spoiler of that beautiful red and yellow liveried caramel machine. Coming down through Biandetti, past the stands. We are going to jump back instead over to Lisa Eskridge here with Robert Galais just behind her. Battle for 11th. I think did she get one more position up to 11th here? Oh, look to the inside in the meantime from Robert.
Oh, stays wide on the entry to the corner, does Lisa, but protects the inside on the exit. Meanwhile, look at this. Mehmet Karasai getting closer than ever here to Casey McDonald as he attempted round the outside of turn one again. Took a few laps to build up the momentum for that attempt at a move, but it hasn't worked 2 times in a row now. Casey McDonald's going to have to try something different to get past Mehmet.
Exactly. He's going to have to get creative. Maybe that turn one isn't the place to do it. Maybe he's got to try and figure out where he's that little bit quicker than that white and red 78. And right now, he's not especially gaining here through the first part of the lap. So I wouldn't say it's this portion of the track. Could be another one. Or, we haven't talked about it. They have that pit stop. Or he could use this right here.
Yeah, Mehmet getting a bit crossed up over the curb. Momentum lost then through the most challenging corners on the circuit. But manages to actually get it under control very quickly, and now he's starting to pull away from Casey again.
There's such a back and forth between them. Also, Lisa Eskridge now up 8 positions as she moved into 10th when we weren't looking. Not sure who she got by, but it looks like she has just cracked into that top 10. Also, we think we may have kind of deduced what happened to the 277 earlier. As far as we can tell, none of his first laps were counted, and his start was good. So my guess is he must have cut the course somewhere on the first lap, didn't give enough time back, and then never served the drive-through penalty that comes with that. So at least that seems the only last real option, unless you can somehow get 25 incidents in a single lap.
Yeah, I think there's a bit more to Neil Urbesh's race than we otherwise think. Meanwhile, Robert Galais here is actually past Lisa Eskridge now. The move was made a few moments ago. Can Eskridge get the position back?
Love the family affair that we have for the Eskridge team, because Lisa has Ken, who also races in this series, as her spotter tonight. But fortunately, she's going to, like you said, lose that top 10, at least for the time being. We'll see what happens when they get to those pit stops, if someone will maybe try an undercut or potentially an overcut to get by their rivals. Back to Casey McDonald. This has just been the never-ending story. And who is going to be Atreyu in this situation? Once again, off into the dirt. Karachai almost playing the part of the horse getting stuck in the mud.
Yeah, the double right going up the hill, so difficult to get right. It's blind on the exit going over the crest, so you got to set up your trajectory early and just hope that it's right for the corner to come. And Mehmet, I think, having some issues at that corner the last few laps in a row.
Down through the swift final chicane once again. He's recovered. So now we've seen that twice on that portion of the lap where Mehmet just can't seem to keep it on the black stuff. And again, they do have that incident limit. At 17, they'll get a drive-through. So even before you get to that 25, you do suffer a penalty. We don't have the number of incidents yet, although we are in communication with race control. I don't know if we want to bother them to try and look into that, but if they are... Whoa, down to the inside, a surprise move from McDonald's. Doesn't quite work out, as it looks like Karachai is going to be able to at least hold him at bay, but he's offline now. Here it goes.
Here it goes indeed. Will it be the over-under for Casey McDonald on the exit? No, he wasn't able to gear up the momentum, but Mehmet Karasai is now off rhythm. He's having to defend into these fast S-bends, and that is the worst place for a driver. And at a track where it's so dependent on flow, you need to make sure that you're online as much as possible into every single corner. Mehmet is unsettled now, and this is the sequence where he's had problems the last few laps. He's pushing as hard as he can over the curbs here, and he just manages to keep it off the gravel this time around.
You got to remember that this is one of those new tracks with the 3D curbs as well. I've heard some drivers say they don't feel like they affect you as much, but I wonder if they are just kind of upsetting the car a little bit in places that he's not expecting. Back to Claveau. Once again, trying to get by Souza. This one also has been stuck as this at this position pretty much since the start of the race.
Yeah, this is a potential move, though, we're starting to see. Roger Claveau, he's starting to lose touch with Marcus Souza, and a little bit wide on entry into the final corner. It seems like Johan Nye was following him going wide there, as we have our first planned pit stops from within the top three. Kevin Schultz and Mehmet Karasai both in the pits there. Roger Claveau decides to jump in too. So with about 16 minutes remaining on the clock, now we have the pit cycle beginning.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I think is about where we expected the pit window to wrap up. So some of our quicker drivers electing not to try and push the limit of that fuel tank. Come on in, take theirs, and get back out. In fact, Kevin's already back onto the track. He'll return in 7th, handing the lead over to Main temporarily. So when will he come in? Is he going to have to pit this next lap, or is he going to be able to eke it out that bit farther?
That is the question. I would think that Main, not getting much of a slipstream off the leader, won't have much of an opportunity to save fuel. You will have to put the same amount of fuel in your car to get to the end, but a little bit of fuel saving early on can potentially reduce your pit stop time. So through the last corner, Dave Douglas comes down in 15th at the moment. Douglas showed a lot of potential to move up, but of course we did see that spin he had when George Poulos was making his way past him. I think he'll be hoping that there's some more luck coming his way later on.
Sometimes you need a bit of luck in racing to get those good results. Johan Nye up to 4th, but of course that is a slightly false position because some of those were gained by the pit stops. I can report that Main did not come in this time. He flashed past the pit entry, and so did Casey McDonald. I'm keeping half an eye on Casey here, Reese, because remember, he was fighting so close with Karachai, and Mehmet pitted, but in the past we've seen in GT racing, going long is usually the call to make.
Yeah, McDonald now has clear air. He can set more consistent lap times and might just be able to get the position through the pit cycle. Looking at lap times, McDonald's last lap was a 1 minute 50.7. If we go down to Mehmet, well, he hasn't set a lap time that's on pace yet, but he just comes across the line now. 2 minute 11.0. Interesting to see. So I think, yeah, that's his first lap out of the pits. We'll have to wait and see how quick Mehmet is on his own before we make a decision on that battle. Meanwhile, I just saw there Kevin Schultz running off track a little bit, but he's so far in the effective race lead that I don't think it matters if he makes a few mistakes.
As long as they're small mistakes, because I think it was up to about 8 seconds the lead, somewhere around there before the pit stop. So he can't completely spin it and throw it away. He's got to keep it on the black stuff, keep it pointed forward and rolling, and prevent himself from gaining too many incident points as well, because you don't want to get a drive-through penalty, especially this late in the race where he won't have time to try and make up for it. Only other car I think that has taken a stop now is Chris Schuessler on this lap. The others staying out much longer. So maybe it was a little unusually early for some of our first drivers. There's Jeremy Main, though. He's finally coming in.
Yeah, but he's on the pit limiter too early. He cost himself unnecessarily with not jumping in the lane quicker. Got to look out for the yellow cones at the start of pit entry. That's where the pit limiter line is. That's where you need to get down to speed. If you do it early, you're just costing yourself seconds worth of time.
So that could be good news for Karachai and potentially Casey McDonald, who carries on for another lap, becomes now our de facto leader. Marcos Souza also stays out. Jose Souza on our screens. He's got Marcos in front of his name in the sim itself. Keeps tripping me up. The 764 just going to keep on keeping on, I guess, until that thing runs completely dry. We had a couple more in pit lane. Jeppesen, and as we mentioned, Main, who's actually just coming out now. And wow, yeah, it was a huge difference. Jeremy Main lost a ton there. Did he? Yeah, he had a long stop, 14 seconds.
Yeah, that's abnormally long. Maybe he accidentally had tires checked in the pit box menu, because these being GT3 cars, their tires can last quite a bit. You shouldn't have to change tires over the course of a 40-minute race. So, usually I would suspect it's fuel only in the pit stop. I think that might have been the error.
I found it. He missed his pit stall. That's what it was. So,
right.
in fact, combine that with the fact that, like you said, he braked very, very early. That explains why he's so much longer in the lane, because it was only 4 seconds difference before, but he's showing 12 seconds between himself and Jeppesen, who jumped him in the pits from cone to cone. That is a massive loss, and one of the little areas, I suppose, of racing he'll have to focus on for the next race, because that really cost him a potential podium. Maybe we'll even see Souza get close to that now.
Well, Souza definitely nailed pit entry. You could see that he braked at the correct point and slowed down just in time for the limiter line. So we'll see what he can do. Casey McDonald also in the lane too, as Kevin Schultz races on back into the race lead and looking as quick as ever. 149.6. That's only 200ths off his quickest lap of the entire race so far. Mehmet Karasai is going to overcome Casey McDonald. The pass is made. Casey could not get it done. So we'll see now whether or not he can catch back up to Mehmet and have a run at what is now second on track.
The second slower cone to cone for Casey compared to the 78 car. So that didn't quite work out. And the lap time difference, I guess, while they were both on track, was just not enough. Almost 3 seconds difference between them with 9 minutes left to go. And we've been watching the progress of Lisa Eskridge. Where is she now out on track in terms of position? Holy cow! No wonder I couldn't find her.
Yeah, and part of that is she is the only car now that has not visited pit lane. She still owes us a pit stop.
I was gonna say, how in the world did she jump that many in the pit stops? That is phenomenal. Okay, so still needs to get some fuel here. She could wind up inside the top 10 when she returns. That's about where she's been battling much of the race. Johan Nye just behind her at the moment. This is coming down to the last part of the lap, so this is likely where she'll have to pit in. This is incredible fuel saving on her part, going a full at least lap longer than anybody else, but at least 2 or 3 laps longer than most everybody else.
Yeah, very good fuel usage from Lisa Eskridge in the first part of this race. Wide in the final turn, actually gearing up for a late apex there, but I would suspect she's going to go for the pits this time around, and she does. There we go. Lisa Eskridge cleanses the field, but she's on the pit limiter line too early again. Brake too early. So that's, again, potentially about a second that she's just cost herself.
Oh, that is a real shame for what was a good race, and yeah, I can already see 10th getting ready to go by her, and I don't think she's even made it to her stall. Nope, she's got there now. About 10 seconds. Wow, very short pit stop. Shortest of anybody barring Dave Douglas, who did a 6.4 for some reason. Not sure what that's about. But Eskridge, 8.6 seconds stationary. Poulos going to come up behind her. He's going to be able to take the 10th place away, but she should easily settle into 11th.
Yeah, well done there to Lisa Eskridge, and she's come out in a little bit of clear air herself. Has to look out for Robert Galles, who's at the moment about a second and a bit behind her, so I think she's safe for the time being. Roger Clabot, meanwhile, still running in 5th place. Clabot was one of the first drivers to make their way into the pit lane, along with Kevin Schultz. Actually, the first driver to make a stop was Dave Douglas, and that was 14 laps ago. Something tells me that we might be seeing Dave Douglas come back in for a second pit stop, because that seems abnormally early.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't think he should be able to get to the end. But, I mean, we saw Lisa go to about 8 minutes left, 7 minutes left, so who knows? That could be within the time frame. We're on lap 18, so that would have been lap 4 that he pitted. We've got 6 minutes to go. Yeah, I might be. Yeah, I'm starting to lean towards your theory that he's still got to come in one more time.
Well, we'll see. There's only 6 minutes left in the race, and depending on the pace of the leaders, could be the saving throw that Dave Douglas needs to not have to pit again. But we'll keep an eye on this battle for 5th. Clabot now getting Jose Souza in his rear mirrors. There is Dave Douglas right now, and he's keeping up the pace as we have seen before, but coming up to the final corner here, this might be the clue. If he avoids the pits here, then at the very least we know that he's good for at least one more lap.
Which will start to put him pretty close, but nope. The answer is he cannot. He comes in to take that tiny little splash of fuel. He's already down in 13th, unfortunately. So it's not going to be a great points day, if any, for that number 42. As we come back to Souza once again, still fighting for a top 5. Clabot in front of him, jumped him in the pit stops, I believe. That or we missed a pass on track between them. The 17 with an excellent and cool run.
Indeed. Apologies for the background noise there. My phone fell out of my pocket. Marcos Souza, Jose Souza, still trying to keep up the pace here. His last lap time was 3 seconds slower than Roger Clabot. So there's a bit of a pace difference between these guys at the moment, and I think Souza will be hoping that there's a little more consistency in the tank for him for this last 4.5 minutes. Everyone's spaced out, haven't they, Joe, after the pit cycle? Mehmet Karasai and Casey McDonald for second. There's no battle there, so we're basically waiting to see what eventuates in terms of mistakes. In terms of lap times, it looks like Johan Nye is the quickest car in the top 5 right now, racing for 5th. And meanwhile, the battle for 11th is on again. Robert Galles trying to get a move done here on Lisa Eskridge. Tries up the inside, makes contact, and they both spin.
Oh, no. So they're going to lose some time here. Can they get it going? Looks like Robert's going to get it pointed forward. Lisa takes a bit longer to try and return. I wonder if that might be a post-race penalty, since there might not be enough time for them to really look at it and hand anything out if they deem it worthy. Kevin Schultz, you talked about everything separating. He's separated by 15 seconds now over Mimit. Of course, that may have been just slightly closer if Maine hadn't have had his slow pit stop, but it would have maybe be just 2 seconds smaller, which is still pretty impressive. This green number 13 has just put an absolute whipping on everybody.
Indeed, he has. And you speculated that there might not be time to look at that incident. Well, apparently Race Control disagrees. They have instantly given a penalty to Robert Galles for his contact there with Lisa Eskridge.
Well, that was very snappy and a testament to the stewards in this series. When they know that time is of the essence, they can absolutely get those out and make sure that justice is served. Lisa down to 12th now. Galais going to give that spot back when he has to pit in. That'll promote her to 11th, but she's, I think about 18 seconds off of George Poulos. So doubt she's going to be able to catch that 192 to get that top 10. Still, she's run a great race here today. Karachai up in P2 has about 2.5 seconds gap to Casey McDonald. There you can see him on screen with 2 minutes left to go. Should be white flag next time by for Kevin Schultz. Not much more to bring this one home.
Yeah, not much more indeed. One more tour of this 5.24 kilometer circuit upcoming for the green number 13. We'll keep our eye out here on this battle because look at how close they are now. There's Karasai in the red car, Donald Green a lapped car in between he and Casey McDonald. Casey will be hoping that Donald makes the job easy and he can potentially take advantage if Karasai makes another mistake. But apart from his wobbles earlier on, haven't seen much to suggest that Karasai is unstable.
Yeah, just a few little off tracks here and there, but lately it's been smooth sailing for him as McDonald having to navigate lap traffic. Donald Green going to let him through since he was put a lap down with that extra pit stop, unfortunately. And, well, actually, probably appreciate if Donald would hold up Johan Nye now because Nye caught a lot in that overtaking maneuver. Casey McDonald now going to get the favor return just a little bit, as it looks like Johan's not going to be able to get through as they come through the final corner. Also, Kevin Schultz has already taken the white flag. We are now officially 1 to go.
Yep, and it has been a dominant performance so far for Kevin Schultz, untroubled at the front of the field, now working his way through lap traffic. Looks like Dave Douglas there ahead of him. So, I mean, he doesn't really need to push. His last lap time was a 151.6. Drivers in around the 4th, 5th place region are the ones setting quick lap times right now, trying to get those final positions before the race ends. But look at how smooth Kevin Schultz is. I mean, we haven't seen a single error from him pretty much all race, apart from those couple of little tours in the gravel trap.
Yep, and even then, they looked pretty minor from what we could see of it. In fact, he really doesn't have to fight to get by Dave here. He can just kind of ride behind him if he feels like it's not worth trying to lap that car. Obviously, they do have blue flags out here, but they're informational only, so they don't have to dive out of the way for him. As they come down through the last couple corners, the beautiful green number 13 basically controlled this one from start to finish. He didn't lead every lap through the pit cycle, but he didn't really need to. I don't think he's worried about that. Oh, as he's got to stay out of trouble, and that's why those big gaps can sometimes help you. He can give away a second or two to just ease up through the final turn. A small drama, but no sweat off the brow of Kevin Schultz, who wins today at Mugello.
Again, a beautiful performance there from Kevin Schultz. I mean, no one could hold a candle to him today. He just had the car sorted, he had the track sorted, had the strategy sorted as well. But congratulations to Mehmet Karatai, who manages to finish second ahead of Casey McDonald, took advantage of McDonald's mistake in the pit lane and is awarded quite substantially.
Also, I want to give a shout to Josh Jeppesen, who was up 7 positions from 13th to finish 6th today think we had 2 drivers that managed that. Lisa Eskridge, of course, the other, who is coming around to finish her final lap in just a few moments' time. In fact, 14 drivers going to complete all 22 laps of this race.
Lovely stuff. Unfortunately, 2 retirements on the list, including Neil Urbesh and Evan Balbier. Evan was parked due to connection issues, and Urbesh disqualified from the sim. Not too sure still what exactly happened to have that happen, but yeah, what a performance from Kevin Schultz. 13 seconds in the end.
Yeah, there is your official results, unofficial results, I should say. 13 seconds for the win, even with him having to slow down in the final corner over Mehmet Karachai, who finished an excellent P2, and Casey McDonald as well. He may not have gotten past the 78, but he did get onto the podium for that third. Johan Nye was just shy in the end, about a little over a second off those steps as he finishes 4th. Claveau, a gain of 5 positions for a top 5, and as I mentioned, Jefferson up 7 to finish 6th. It was Jose Souza who managed to get 7th today. Jeremy Main wound up P8 after he ran at the front for much of the time, but had a very slow pit stop. Edward Trippett was 9th, and then top 10 race going to be rounded out by George Poulos.
Lisa Eskridge finishes in 11th. A well-executed race from her, despite getting clobbered in the rear by Robert Gallez, who finishes 13th and last car on the lead lap. Douglas, Ayer, Green, Scheusler, and Gerwing will finish a lap down on everyone else. And as I mentioned, Neil Urbesh and Evan Balbier not making it to the finish.
Well then, that is going to wrap up today's coverage of the challenge class. But remember, we've got more coming your way. So make sure and join us tomorrow, March 21st, for the sport class here at Mugello. A big thank you to the steering committee at PCA Sim Racing, as well as to our team tonight, Reese, Ramir, and Cameron on social media. Thank you so much for watching tonight's broadcast of PCA Sim Racing. I'm Joe Peak. Race clean, race hard. We'll see you on the track.